even like the attacks they use are unique for every character. It's never
Really?
just oh, I'm a dude with a sword. It's like no. I've got a gang of 5 guys for my basic attacks. Here are their names. We had one character whose basic attack was a truck. And it just came in from off screen and ran someone over. And because the rules are separate, and then you build the setting around it, that all hangs together. And it gives you this really fun, crunchy combat.
I'm going to go ahead and warn you ahead of time. This is one of those episodes where you're going to have to grab your wallet. I sit down with the people behind Rowan, Rook, and Decard, or at least 2 of them, Chris and Grant. And we talk about how they've created their 3 big games, which are Unbound, Spire, and Heart. This is one of those rare opportunities where you have 2 people that partner together and carry equal weight in the creation of an RPG. I found it fascinating how different Grant and Chris are, and I think it really shows during the broadcast. But yet they overlap, and they find this sweet spot where they find a place where they are both happy. Chris from a mechanical standpoint, Grant from a storytelling standpoint, and they produce some truly unique games. We talk about the origins, their first game, how they progressed from that to starting a brand new company with 3 people, and where they're headed next. In fact, as a quick aside, as this is being released, this episode is being released, they currently have a brand new Kickstarter going, and it's for Sin, a Spire RPG source book. It is set to close on April 29th, 1 o'clock Eastern. Depending on when you listen to this, you might still be able to get in on this Kickstarter. If not, make sure you swing over and follow the link in the show notes to potentially doing a late pledge. But I think you are going to enjoy hearing how these gentlemen create the sausage. There are a ton of laughs. There's some secret advice for GMs in there and players in there. And it's a ton of fun. So sit back, relax, and let's learn how Chris and Grant make games.
Third Floor Wars delivers interviews, insights, and discussions about everything hitting the tabletop. In a world where life hits you from all sides, you deserve time to relax, disconnect, and unplug. Rulebooks, plastic models, dice, and cards in hand. Let the gaming begin. Tabletop games let you escape and unleash grand battles and regale epic tales of adventure with your friends. If you love gaming and learning from players, designers, experts, and creators, you are in the right place. Pull up a chair. Craig and Ray welcome you to the Third Floor and the Tabletop Talk Podcast.
Craig here on the Third Floor. Today my guests are Chris Taylor and Grant Howard of Rowan, Rook, and Decard. Their company's tagline is interesting games for awesome people. So we're going to find out whether we're awesome and if their games are in fact interesting. So I want to start with you, Grant. Welcome to the Third Floor.
Hello.
So Grant, there was a day, and I would venture to guess with a little bit of gray in your beard, it wasn't yesterday, but there was a day where you knew nothing about tabletop gaming. You didn't know you could roll dice and pretend to be other people or move miniatures around a table.
No, man, I came out the womb playing D&D.
So, what was your first game? That's going to be my next question.
Well, it would be at that point, I suppose, AD&D. I put the nurse and the doctors through a pre, during, and then antenatal run through the Chamber of Horrors.
Completely homebrew.
I'm old school, mate. Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
No,
you skipped Blue Box, right?
I didn't. I don't even know what that is. I didn't start playing RPGs for a long time. I think the first time I saw RPGs being played was in the year 2000, which is
no kidding,
21 years ago now. But I saw some older boys playing Vampire the Masquerade and thought it was very exciting. And then
most people just do that with drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't get into drugs or role playing until I came to university, where I met Chris.
Hello.
He bought me role playing, and I bought him drugs. So I think it kind of balanced out quite nicely.
Guys, now we know why you guys work together. So out of curiosity, like, had you been involved in any kind of anything to be classified as nerds before then?
I played Warhammer. So
okay.
I played. Of course, that's tabletop wargaming, isn't it? It's tabletop things. Yeah, I played Warhammer from '96 onwards. I remember being really excited about I remember walking to Games Workshop and I saw there was one side was 40k, one side was Warhammer, and it was just all these things I didn't know yet.
Yeah.
It was so exciting. I used to buy codexes for and army books for armies I didn't ever intend to possess and just read them for the stories.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I did that. That was fun. And it was at Games Day 2000, the night before for Games Workshop, where I saw Sabat being played, and I was like, "Oh, they can just do anything. They don't have to use models or out."
Yeah.
But,
So, what was it like then to like as soon as you found role playing and started doing role playing, you're like, yeah, this is it. I'm in. Or
I discovered role playing, and it was a scant 6 years before I got to play any.
Wow.
All my friends were too cool.
Yeah.
Because I went to a really small English language school in Portugal, so my year had about 5 people in it, and I could never really corral them into properly playing role playing games. So my first proper GM was Chris.
No kidding.
Who brought me into this life.
And now look at you.
Is now riding me around like a pony.
Hey, it's worked out well for me.
Yeah.
That gives me a great chance to jump to Chris. Chris, welcome to the third floor.
Hello.
So before you became Grant's pusher, how did you find tabletop gaming?
My first dealer was my mother.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my mum got me into role-playing games when I was like 9 or something
No
like
kidding.
that, so that I just go and do something over there rather than bothering her.
Oh, okay.
And so I bothered her
Very
for the
much
next
a
5
solo
years,
experience.
because I much like Ron, I didn't really know that many people. I knew a couple of nerds, which was quite good, but
Yeah.
it was just me badgering people, trying to force them to play with elves with me. It was pretty good, honestly.
Well, yeah,
It
but
was certainly easier game than it is now.
and obviously, this is an audio, so people can't see, but my listeners know that we do this over video, and I can see your models behind you, your miniatures, and you showed me your little paint table and stuff. So
it's just nerd stuff as far as
full
I
of
can
nerd,
see.
which I love. But so what was it then? At what point did you finally find tabletop role playing?
So I guess like very early, I was trying to force other people to play with me, and they wouldn't because again, too cool. Even at 9, people are me too cool for D&D. But it really took off for me, sort of secondary school. How old are you?
High school. They say.
High school era.
Yes, right.
Where we finally managed to convince 5 or 6 people to really just, let's sit down and do a campaign. I've heard of these campaigns.
What was the game?
And I bought it was AD&D. I bought the Sunless Sea box,
Nice.
like one of these mega campaigns, and had no idea what I was doing. And then proceeded to spend the next 2 and a bit years going through that whole box.
No.
Every room, the lot of it. Wow. It was too much. It was far too long.
By the time I was playing under Chris, by the time we hit university, I once saw... So we were in a 1.5 long D&D campaign, and I was once sitting next to Chris, and I was like, I'm going to be cheeky. I'm going to peek at his notes to see what's coming up in this week's session. And he'd written, elves, ? Lawyers? Underlined. Blam! Is adventure. We didn't encounter elves or lawyers.
No.
During the session.
There was nothing behind the curtain, not even a wizard, huh?
No, that is honestly, ever since that Sunless Sea boxed adventure, that is how I've run games.
Yeah.
Like, when I say notes, I mean at most 3 words, and then I will ignore them.
They're like a safety net you shouldn't use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there to make the crowd feel safe.
It's the emergency parachute.
That's phenomenal. So you guys obviously meet at university then, based on what I'm piecing together here. And you guys play some role-playing games together. What was your first venture outside of that D&D campaign? Did you guys discover, non-fantasy type games at all?
Oh, yeah.
Or did you guys...
we played a bunch of Call of Cthulhu. Chris ran that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
We did Master Nyarlathotep, and unfortunately, because it's a pre-written campaign and Chris was not just writing down 3 words on a bit of paper, we instantly derailed it without trying.
Yeah.
And Chris had to surgically transplant a mansion from the British countryside to, I believe, Cairo.
Yes.
That's funny.
We did that. We ran a LARP together as well. So like our first
really?
game design was a LARP. It was
Technically
called...
That's
paid.
hardcore nerd right there. LARPing is
Okay,
like...
no, it wasn't. Okay, so it's technically paid in that people gave us money, but we were
Okay.
losing money up until game 5, at which point we each made £2.70.
Look at you.
Right?
Look at you.
Rolling in
And
it.
the life of luxury ever since, right?
We did a game called Zombie LARP, so you can guess what it's about. This is before we learned how to name things. I think we're still struggling. And
It is hard.
It's difficult. And Zombie LARP was a LARP written by 2 men who had tried LARPs and found it boring.
That's phenomenal.
So, like, what was the average life of a player?
It clocked into just under 7 minutes.
Yes, that's correct, yeah. And
It was terrifying.
It was foam weapons and Nerf shotguns and running around a disused sports hall like between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m.
Phenomenal.
Sort of thing I could not do now in my
Oh,
elder
man.
years. But,
That's
it
great.
was fun. Oh, it was great. And that's of course why we got involved with Mary, who's the third part of our business.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Excellent.
My spouse, partner, and Chris's friend, I suppose. And we're all
Legally, yes.
Yeah, legally, yes. And we all run Rowan, Rook, and Decard together.
That's phenomenal.
Mary
So where did
is
the name come from?
brains. Oh, Chris.
Oh, that's actually character names or assumed character names that we've used in the past. So
For the three of you. That's
yeah,
cool.
so Mary's Rowan, Grant's Rook, and I'm Decard.
Excellent.
We thought
Excellent,
it sounded like a
excellent.
law firm.
So I love the name. The name immediately, it's like, I don't hear game companies called this. It sounds very official.
No, it shortens nicely down to RRD Games,
I
which we
like
have
it.
to give
Very
people
good.
for their web address because they can't spell the Decard part.
Decard's hard
The
to spell.
Decard part.
Yeah. We
So-
pronounce it wrong. It's the other thing that really throws me off.
you're pronouncing that name correct.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize I was doing it
No,
differently.
you
you did it
That
right.
is the correct way to pronounce
Decard.
that.
You shouldn't even put the D
learned
near
the
there.
wrong pronunciation of it and have done it ever since.
Doing it Blade Runner style.
And thus it is yours, Chris.
Yeah, exactly.
Thus
It's
it is
personalised.
yours.
Custom.
That's right. Your homebrew name.
Yeah.
So, guys, we're going to, after the break, I want to talk a lot about kind of, the founding of RRD. But before we do, the one thing I want to kind of get out there, because it really was astounded on your website, the adventure calendar you guys did at the end of last year. I would, first of all, for those listening, you've got to go. I'll have a link in the show notes. You got to go check it out. It was kind of an advent calendar, but each day they had like immediately usable stuff for your game. It was random tables, ideas, and I spent like 3 hours going through each one of them. Where did the idea of that come from? Whose was that?
We've got it in physical format as well.
Oh, it's so cool.
Print it out. We'll have it in a calendar.
Very nice.
It was mine because I came up with the idea of a pun. because it sounds like advent calendar.
Right.
And I want to write a lot of jokes about like Christmas and wizards and stuff. Oh, hey, can we swear on this show? Or is it cool? Yeah, okay. About wizards and Christmas and shit. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, all right, kids. Don't worry.
We're cool.
This ain't your dad's wargaming podcast spin-off. I wanted to write a load of jokes, and I couldn't come up with an idea for a one-page game. So I was like, why not make it a 30-page game? It wasn't smart doing
No.
that. There's much easier ways to make money for me
I'm sure.
to do. But it was tremendous fun doing it, and like it was nice getting Chris in to just sort of like either Chris performs his like I sort of vomit forth words like a fire hose, and Chris comes in and just knocks some of those off the page, and maybe like pushes me in certain directions. But there's Christopher comes in and just sort of gradually pulls me back a little bit if I'm getting a bit excited about things.
That's great. Now, if I was dumb enough to come up with this idea like you were, I would have been like on day 13, I would have been like what was I thinking? Like I only had 10 ideas.
Day two.
I was getting paid $2,500 for it
Oh, okay.
because we put it through Patreon. So
Oh, nice.
now we get that for every game that we put out through Patreon. So
Sure.
again, 30 times more work than I needed to do. But
Sure.
it was an incentive, certainly. And
Uh-huh.
The one thing we did do is that on our website we had these things called Glimmers and Remnants,
oh yeah.
which were basically us just messing about doing D10 tables for stuff. It was kind of an urban horror setting told through tables.
It was either
Nothing
urban
else?
horror or fantasy.
Yeah. Well, one was Glimmers was urban
Glimmers was
horror,
urban horror, yeah.
Remnants was fantasy. And they told like the story of a world only through tables.
Huh.
And we kind of wanted to build on that idea and make it a thing, a unit, rather
It
than
was
just
tremendous
yeah,
amounts of fun.
it
It was
really
great
was.
fun. It was tremendous amounts of work.
Yeah. And you know what's funny about it, and I don't know if you gentlemen have noticed this or not, but it's funny how random tables were there at the beginning, right? If we go all the way back to Moldvay and everybody, like that was the heart of a lot of early versions of role playing. And then they became, oh, we don't do random stuff, right? We're gonna design everything, and everything's gonna be with purpose and 3 acts. But I've noticed like they kind of come back in vogue again. You're starting to see them again in games, random tables coming back. Any ideas why that is?
I think
Or what made you guys decide to do them?
I think it's because people finally worked out how to use them.
Interesting.
Because back in the olden times, what you used to use a random table for was randomly generating something.
Right.
You'd roll your D whatever, and that would be gospel. You got a 7, that's your result. Now what people do is they look at them and go, oh, I could roll on that, but screw it, I'm gonna pick 7.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a long list of really useful ideas of hooks and stuff like that. And since we learned how to do it, they're just more interesting.
Oh, that's interesting. So like the numbers are optional, right? They
Yeah,
could just as
completely
easily be
optional.
bullets, but if you want to roll and
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at a lot of our books, like there's a lot of things that could be in tables but aren't.
interesting.
And then we also include tables because it's just a way to dump ideas out
Yeah,
that we have no other
I like
place.
The trick is combination. That's the challenge. You have to get the tables that play off each other, because if you can
Right.
get 2d6 tables that work together, that's 36 things.
Interesting.
And so it really helps replayability, but it also can really help to spark an idea. And it's really hard to write a good table.
Yeah.
It's so easy to write a bad one, and one which just doesn't pop, and like every one page that we put out, Chris and I will be going through the lists and testing them and iterating them to make sure that they're funny or they're engaging or they generate plot. I had to take a horse out of one recently.
You did.
I had to remove a horse from my Final Destination table.
With a table, you've got a kind of guaranteed read order, right? You know, it works from top to
Oh
bottom.
yeah.
Yeah.
And because you've got that, you've actually got pacing in a way that you don't often have in a paragraph,
Yeah.
which means you can do comic timing. So
number 7's the joke.
you see, but you expect number 7, so it's got to be 8 or 6 now. And if you've
I like
put
3.
if you've put a very plain one at 2, 3 has to be plain, 4 has to be funny, and you get this really nice like meter to what you're doing in a D10
Very
table.
interesting.
And you can reference tables to the left of it, but not to the right, because we read from left to right.
Yeah.
But also it has to stand alone. It's interesting
I
writing
love
comedy games.
how much you two have thought about this.
holy
This is
shit,
and it
we
shows.
never stop
This
thinking
is all
about
I
this.
do.
Oh, it's really good, and it helps me understand why I thoroughly enjoyed going day by day through those tables, because it wasn't just, here's 10 things, let's put it up there and be done with it. It's obvious there's a lot of thought behind it. So guys, the reason I do these Insider Insight series is it gives me a chance to talk to developers, designers, artists, writers, and industry insiders about their creative process and how they approach their work. And that's my goal with Chris and Grant today. I want to get an idea of, one, how they started becoming producers of content and creating games. And I also hopefully will learn, like we did with the random tables, kind of the thoughts behind it, and how they get from there's nothing to here, buy this right now, and why we should. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk about the history of their company. We'll be right back. There are so many online retailers. It can be hard to find one that is trustworthy, has great prices, along with some reliable customer service. On the third floor, we love ordering our gaming goodies from Gadzooks Gaming. Their selection of terrain, miniatures, dice, custom decor, and conversion bits are curated for gamers by gamers. You'll find they have what you need and what you didn't know you needed to take your gaming fun to the next level. If you mention Third Floor Wars in the cart notes of your order, you'll also get a free gift. And you'll help support the podcast. Check out gadzooksgaming.com and mention Third Floor Wars on checkout to get that free gift. So now that we've got a little bit of an idea of how Chris and Grant met, where their shared passions came from, slogging through a 2-year D&D campaign together, I'd be curious when our third member, Mary, comes in, and when the three of you decide, like, maybe we can start producing stuff other people would want to read and buy. Like, when was the first seeds of the company laid?
We were partially underwater.
Oh, really? How so?
Wow. Wouldn't you like to know? We were at a pool, actually, in Portugal. We were on holiday, all three of us together, and we decided that maybe we could make a go of this.
Uh-huh.
Chris, what had we written before that? We put out Unbound, right?
Yeah, so collaboratively, we put out Unbound at that point. And Unbound was written almost entirely to stave off madness.
It did not work.
No.
How so? What was
Grant
driving
was
the madness we were staving?
Yeah, Grant was living in New York at the time.
Yes, I was in New York.
I moved
around with my partner's job a lot up until 2015.
Yeah, and I was on my own at that point, and unemployed and just not doing anything.
Yeah.
And so we went, let's make a game. Let's just make a game. It'd be fun. And we did. And we sat there and we went, by the way, this is bloody good. This is brilliant.
Can we release this?
Maybe we can make a quid, as desperate people do.
Yeah.
And we made a quid.
Yeah. We did pretty well. Like, we had a lot of hustle. We had a lot of moxie, I think.
And then in that pool in Portugal, we were like, actually, with Mary's enormous business brain, Grant's enormous writing brain, and me.
Chris, you're good at rules.
I know. We could actually make this something that we earn money from. We could make this our everyday.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, it's insane.
So... And we're going to have a whole segment about Unbound, because that's what originally how I found you found you guys, was hearing people talk about Unbound. But I didn't realize Unbound predated the company.
Yep,
I should say.
It does, yeah.
That was the thing we put out before Spire.
Interesting.
Spire was our inauguration, as it were.
So how do you put something like that out? Like you just screw it. We're going to put it on Drive Through RPG.
You play a lot of Secret World. You play a lot of the Secret World MMO.
Okay.
The Secret World MMO is a really genius MMO. It's absolutely astonishing. It is,
I don't think I've ever heard of it.
It's an urban horror MMO that's got full investigation, like old point-and-click adventure game level investigation. I have a notebook full of my notes from trying to solve these things.
The writing's brilliant. The acting's good.
No kidding.
It's an astonishing game, and the way that you build characters in that is the original game. They've changed it a lot now, but you had this enormous wheel with imagine a normal MMO like Warcraft, whatever. Imagine every ability in the game from every class is on that wheel, and you've got to pick your way through it as you want to. So you can have a bit from here and a bit from there and a bit from here, and we wanted that kind of superhero freedom, and that picking and choosing different segments and like a modular character. And that's what kind of pushed into Unbound's character creation.
Right, but
you're asking about the physical nature of releasing a book.
Literally, the design about Unbound, I can't wait to talk about.
We'll get there.
But it's one thing for the three of you guys, guys and gals, gender neutral guys, to sit down and say, hey, this is a great, let's make this. And then you're like, holy crap, it's actually really good. What's the next step to get? How do you sell it? How did you push it out there initially? How did you get people to recognize it existed?
Kickstarter is a valuable tool.
Okay.
It has its own marketing. I think something like 40% of our Kickstarter backers come from within Kickstarter. So it'll be referred by a different project. It'll go to the front page. It'll get an email about it. It's a huge number compared to, say, Twitter or Reddit or what have you, for the amount of effort that you put in.
Right.
And Kickstarter is very good at drumming up enthusiasm. People are like, well, I want to be part of something. I want to give money to this project that's cool. And crucially, you're selling them the idea of a game, which is much more profitable than an actual game.
Yeah, true.
An actual game could have balance problems.
Yeah.
But an imaginary game, they'll throw money at you for that.
So what condition was Unbound in when you put it out on Kickstarter? Was it ready to go?
Or... Oh, it was written at that point. It was. I think it was fully written.
Was word complete.
Interesting.
That's how we like to do it.
It didn't have any layout or art. We paid for a little up front, but everything else was paid for by the Kickstarter.
And then we took the money from that and invested it in the business, and we were able to roll forward onto Spire. And really, the model goes Kickstarters. You get a big enough Kickstarter to push you up, and then if you focus on making products which just keep selling, that can keep you afloat. So Spire is still selling multiple copies every day, which keeps us in cheese.
Yeah, but what's nice about the Kickstarter is it's a prepayment, which is wonderful, right? So it allows, from a cash flow perspective, it's nice. I bet it's very. And it also then you then create a player base, right? So then there's people talking about Unbound. There's people talking about Spire. So you guys put it out there, and do you guys have the traditional our first Kickstarter horror stories, or did it go pretty well?
That was our second. That was my second Kickstarter.
Oh, okay.
So it was my first Kickstarter with Chris. But before that, we did Goblin Quest, and Goblin Quest is a rules very light, basically GM-less game which kids can play, but also drunk adults. It's a fun madcap game, and I promised I had a reward tier on there, which is, I think it was £250. I will write the book out by hand for you. And I wasn't expecting anyone to buy them. I thought it would be a fun joke, and they all got bought.
No kidding.
Man, you've done some dumb shit in your life.
I illustrated those. I drew the goblins.
No kidding.
Yeah. Like, to my mother's enormous credit, she bought one and then said it was okay that I didn't do it. as a way of supporting her son through his first thing. And we put too many stretch goals in that. I moved countries twice during it. It was really hard to deliver on. So we ended up that was a real challenge. We learned a lot of lessons. But by that point, so Mary was steering this Kickstarter behind the scenes, and then by the time we got to Unbound, they were also making everything work and sort of making the spreadsheets line up and make sure we didn't bankrupt ourselves. And then they were one of the founders of the company, so they are in it. We make the games. We make the games, and they do stuff to them, and the money happens.
So, Chris, I'd be curious for you, seeing, the understandable first-timer mistakes that Grant and Mary made with theirs, and then they come to you and say, hey, let's do it. We've done this before. Let's do the Unbound as a Kickstarter. Did you have any reservations, or were you say, let's go? Or did you say only if?
I was massively unemployed and desperate for money.
I don't have any reservations, you cheeky
If they just
fuck.
said, give us a tenner, I might give you 100 back in 6 months. I'd have given them a tenner.
That's funny.
You didn't have the bus fare home at that
I
point.
couldn't afford a tenner.
Chris and I are best mates, and
I'm learning the key to your business is finding somebody desperate when you're looking for that third party.
Yeah. You need them to be ready to kill their firstbone. That's how you do it.
Man, I miss her. She was a good kid.
So let's talk about Spire.
No, but since we met, Grant and I have been just literally family. It's honestly weird.
Yeah, we're both only children. I think we're fulfilling a brother role.
Yeah,
interesting.
Lives. And so it was like when the suggestion of money and companies and Kickstarters come, I was like, yeah, let's do that. It's fine. There's no worry about is this person a little bit dodgy? Sure, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
no. I understand, but there's no. It's just like, yeah, this will work.
Well, and that's not something to be light about, though, Chris. In all honesty, I mean, it's a big deal, right? Like you're out there and you're making promises that you're committing to keep. And trust me, as a person who has, luckily had percentage wise great success at Kickstarter, there's still probably 7 projects that I've never seen, right? That have never been fulfilled.
Oh, you backed.
That I backed.
Sorry, I thought you just hadn't fulfilled on 7
I haven't fulfilled 7 Kickstarters. Screw y'all.
And so now I'm down to 4 listeners after pissing everybody off. No.
I had to pivot to role-playing games after I lost my Malifaux audience.
It's really funny. So that's no light thing whatsoever. So we get Chris out of complete and abject poverty.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
We've got some Kickstarters going. You've got some other very popular games that followed Unbound. and there's things about this question I hate, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What keeps you going? Are you just having a great time and you love this and this is what you were meant to do? Or
at the moment, what keeps me going is something called venlafaxine.
I have no idea what that is.
It's an antidepressant.
It's an antidepressant. Chris, what about you?
We're both on a venlafaxine,
yeah, that's the main thing. Venlafaxine, the promise of sleep.
One day. Yeah, honestly, like this is hell is fun.
Yeah.
Like we write about elves for a living. Like I don't have another job. I write about elves. And that's great fun. Obviously, doing emails is just the worst.
Yeah.
But that's part of company.
It's really mercenary, but the money keeps us going.
Yeah.
And I think, like, the business is founded, like, fundamentally, this is a business founded on love. In that we didn't get into this because we were going to make money. We got into this because we know each other, we trust each other, and this is a safe and secure way of making sure that Chris and I get to do what we want and stuff we're good at and make money come in. And that's really valuable. And so because money's coming in, that's a huge motivator because I'm supporting my best friend, because I'm keeping I'm getting a roof over my own head, although Mary has like a real job.
Right.
That's the other thing. So yeah, Mary has a proper job, that's really why the roof is here.
Right.
And the 8 floors below you, and the 12-acre garden, and the limos. Yeah, no, we get it.
And the wing for the butlers, yeah.
Of course, don't worry.
And the Phoenix milk.
So, for a lot of listeners, this is a dream, right? To make a living doing what you guys are doing. But what's the part nobody talks about? What's the part that sucks? Because it can't all just be awesome, right? There's got to be times you're like, what, this kind of blows.
I mean,
I think the self-motivation's a challenging one for both of us.
Yeah, it really is.
We both suffer from the brain demons.
From the brain crazies, yeah.
Yeah.
And also we are the worst at deadlines. Like, I know everyone.
Hey. I've only ever missed one deadline and I'm currently missing it.
Yeah. But like when you're working for yourself, when you're setting your own deadlines, and like if we don't work, that's fine, right? In theory, just nothing gets done. But then no books get written, and then all that lovely money that pays for this lovely roof doesn't get in, and sometimes you just drag yourself to the PC and like, I know write about another fucking elf.
And and like you have to be, because it's creative, and because we're writing, like, we are not writing to brief, we're not writing to spec. This is all us, and like at the moment we're developing a new game. And it's completely outside of Spire and outside of Heart. It's a new thing, and so there's tremendous pressure on. Well, I certainly feel the pressure. I don't know about you, Chris, in terms of like, well, this has to be great. And so if I turn up and it's like, well, you know what? If I'm feeling terrible today, it's not worth writing anything because it's going to be terrible. And so much of it is tied to like my own mood, but also Chris's mood and whether or not we're syncing today. And that it is not possible to turn up and phone it in and still have the same amount of work come out. And I've worked plenty of terrible jobs. Chris used to work in retail. I used to work in a call center for pensions administration. I still don't understand how pensions work. I was there for 3 years. And at that point, you can turn up and just completely not even realize what's going on. You can just do it and grow on. And we can't do that. And that's the challenge, I think, the hustle. And you've got to get up. You've got to have new ideas. You have to be, as for me, certainly, I have to be aware of my position in the industry and how I'm perceived. Chris is wisely hidden from the limelight.
I am an invisible man. It is genius.
There are no pictures of Chris on the internet, as far as I'm aware.
That's wonderful.
I've tried very hard to maintain that. Thank you. It is great though when occasionally when you're at a convention and you're having a conversation with somebody like, and they're talking like, I think Grant Howitt's here. He wrote Spire. Did he? Oh, did he?
Did he? Did you read past the word Howitt and Chris Taylor, any chance?
Do you see a fucking ampersand?
Oh, that's really funny.
Someone argued with Chris on our Discord about the rules of our game. And then got his surname wrong.
And I wouldn't mind, but like on our Discord, my name is listed next to one other name under author.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
It says right there.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
So it just goes to show that my being Invisible Man is working wonders.
I will say, we got recognised at Gen Con on the street.
On the street?
That's got to be kind of cool.
Oh my god.
I mean,
Oh,
to be
that was
fair,
amazing.
when you know I'm 6'8", and you know what Grant looks like, it's a lot easier to track us.
Yeah, you look for a scarf and then Chris,
Yeah.
and that's broadly it.
Oh, that's great.
Well, we went
great.
to the con in Italy and we got recognised. That was
Yeah, we
really
went to
nice.
convention. We went to Italy. It was
Went to
wonderful.
Florence and ate Italian food all weekend, and like the Italians were so excited to have us, far more excited than we've ever been in fucking Birmingham when we've gone there.
It's a cool feeling though, because it happened to me. The podcast was after about a year that the podcast was out, and it was at a small convention here, Nova, that happens in Washington D.C. And I was having a conversation with somebody at the bar, and someone goes, "Are you Craig Shipman?" And I mean, yeah. And they're like, I thought I recognized your voice, because the poor bastard had listened to my voice for 50 some odd episodes. But then to have those conversations is great, right? Like somebody who has been consuming what you've been creating, and to hear the joy and the excitement in there. I mean, that must be so great for you guys.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's
especially when other
I'm not gonna lie.
designers. Yeah, like we were what was it called? Stratagemma, the con in Florence, and we were outside on the porch outside this pokey little sort of it was like half a concert hall on the wrong side of Florence, and we were smoking cigarettes outside, and these townsmen go, "Oh, excuse me, are you from Rowan, Rook and Decard?" It's like, "Yes, we are. Oh my god, hello. Who are you? Yeah.
Tell me everything."
Isn't that funny?
They kept buying us coffee. Oh, it was.
They were lovely.
It was. God, they were great. Yeah, go to Florence if you can. Oh, the food. But the most Italian experience I've ever had was Chris and I sat down in Florence on the first night. We sat down in this sort of little sort of back street bistro because we were staying in an Airbnb, and the waiter thankfully spoke English, and he came over and I was like, "Oh yeah, I know we're here for a thing. So can we get these pizzas? And for starter, I'd like the caprese salad, please, which is sort of tomato and mozzarella." And he leans over and goes, "No, no, you
Just
don't
straight
want
up
that.
tells us no.
I bring you something."
That's amazing.
It was
That's
perfect.
amazing.
That is what I wanted going to Italy.
Yeah, that's
I was so happy.
Oh yeah, there was it didn't always happen to me in Italy, but there were moments where I felt just tolerated. Like I was just being barely tolerated.
Yeah.
When you're being helped somewhere by like a toddler, you know, like
exactly.
just come on, it's going to be okay. Come on, we'll get you some lovely pasta. Yeah,
Yes.
We have to make sure the American doesn't sue anyone today.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. So let's take a quick break, and when we get back from this break, let's talk about Unbound, what ultimately became, the seed that planted this tree. So we'll be right back. Howdy friends, Craig here. You deserve a new playmat. Here on the third floor, we use Mats by Mars. They are scratch resistant, waterproof, wet erase marker compatible, almost free of glare, and lighter than neoprene. Mats by Mars gives you over 40 designs to choose from. You pick a mat, pick a design, and then you pick an overlay, like one for Marvel Crisis Protocol, Star Wars Legion, or even Malifaux 3rd Edition. Those overlays will really speed up your deployment and make the placement of objective markers so easy. Use our promotion code in the show notes to get a 10% discount on your first order. In the notes of your order, you can even request the third floor logo on your mat for free. That makes the best mat in the business even a little better. So get some new mats, save yourself some money, and help support the show. Go to matsbymars.com. All the details are in the show notes, including the discount code. So I've been trying to remember, like, what conversation I was having or where I was when the Unbound came onto my radar. So someone was talking about Unbound, or someone said, "Hey, Craig, have you looked at Unbound?" So I start poking around, reading about it, and I'm like, this is very, very interesting. The premise of it I thought was very interesting. What you did with it I thought was extremely interesting. So that's when I tracked who made it. So I get to your site, and I see the adventure calendar. I see, like, this is not the only game you make, and so the next game I read is even more interesting, and then so on and so forth. But I do want to start here, because especially now knowing that this predated the website, this predated everything. So for those that are not familiar with it, Unbound is a universal rules-light role-playing game that puts the whole player group at the forefront of the world. As players make their characters, they are guided by the game master through a series of questions to build the setting, the plot, and the supporting characters that'll make up the game. Now, during the break, I had talked to Grant and Chris a little bit about Rumpelstiltskin role-playing Craig and how much things have changed. So if 20 years ago I'd read this paragraph about a role-playing game, you're like, what the hell are they even talking about? This makes no sense, because the concepts that are being talked about there didn't exist 20 years ago. So let's start with where the beginnings were. So at one point, if I were to forensically go back into the Grant and Chris archives and to trace things backwards as an archaeologist, where would I find what would I find where I'd go, there's where Unbound like first appeared?
I believe the document actually had the word "fuck about" in the title.
I think it did.
It was a bad D20 game.
Okay.
I think it had like Dex and like Int and Wiz in it.
It did.
Like,
Yeah.
we had the classic 6.
It was garbage.
It was bad. What we were trying to do, I think, was take the idea of party-based combat and boil that down. And we were like, well, okay, so it was always about, what was it? It was called Making History, the RPG. That was it, Chris.
Making History Chronicle.
Yeah, and then Unbound. Because World of Darkness released Chronicles of Darkness pretty close to the time we put out.
But the original problem you were trying to solve is group combat?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, so one of the things we really liked from stuff we played in university was passes in Wushu. Wushu is an incredibly rules-like game, absolutely astonishing. You can fit your character on the back of a Rizzler.
That's a cigarette paper, by the way, for American listeners.
Okay, yep. Forgetting there's a translation issue there.
Yeah.
A third of my listeners are from the UK. So.
Okay.
You can literally
sentence.
fit it on a postage stamp. There's nothing to this game. It's all about description. And it has a thing called passes, whereby if you start a description and you kind of offer that description up to another party member, they can finish it and roll more dice in the dice pool at the end.
Like the core idea is like you throwing a clip to someone when they run out of ammo.
Right. It's that sort of idea. And melding that level of passing the action backs and forwards with the sort of combat you get in MMOs.
In the Secret World, in Warcraft and things like that, where one person puts up a debuff on a target, then another character can exploit that. And then because they're exploited in this state, now the rogue can hit them from the side. And that kind of chain reaction gaming. The thing which Chris and I really enjoy in combat in games is 1, tactics.
Yep.
And 2, it being loose enough to describe some bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that wushu has no tactics in it whatsoever. It's like the dice are merely a pacing mechanic, but it gives you this really cool scene, which you can imagine. And if you can combine that with some stuff which is fun to do as a game, that's what Unbound is. And so we wanted combat to be an interesting series of choices and about synergy and abilities coming together, but also it's so loose in terms of fiction that you can describe it however you want. And it's always brilliant talking to people about their Unbound games, because even like the attacks they use are unique for every character. It's never just oh, I'm a dude with a sword. It's like no. I've got a gang of 5 guys for my basic attacks. Here are their names. We had one character whose basic attack was a truck. And it just came in from off screen and ran someone over. And because the rules are separate, and then you build the setting around it, that all hangs together, and it gives you this really fun, crunchy combat.
Interesting.
So
walk me through exactly, because like I understand what the words mean when you say we build the setting as a group. Like I understand what that sentence means, but like what does that really mean? So can you kind of walk me through like how that happens? Because I mean, I don't know if I've seen before Unbound a situation where we're going to play a role-playing game and we don't know what it's going to be yet.
Yeah, that was part of the problem with the Kickstarter as well.
Yeah, it was a hard sell.
It's a nightmare trying to sell anything that's either like a generic universal system or anything without a setting.
Right.
If you go, this is urban horror, but full of vampires. People have something they can grip onto. If you go, it's about whatever you want. Well, like what? Well,
anything.
Literally anything.
As long as it's got fights in.
We've had a play group that was made up entirely of dolphins.
Interesting.
There was one whale.
Oh, there's one whale. Yeah, 3 dolphins and a whale. And we've had games where we were wizards on a school trip, and one was a bus driver. And
it was a school trip.
Rule set.
A school trip specifically designed as an insurance fraud to kill us.
So
and we went on an exciting adventure.
Yeah. And that's literally it. Like the Unbound walks you through from right at the beginning. You draw these things called touchstones. So it's basically random tables to give you a load of words that you can start putting together.
So it's playing card based. So it's 52 different words, and generally you each player draws one of those, and then they kind of pitch it to the group. And the way we do it is like you do it 3 times, and then you take the setting you're most interested about. And invariably, you create a sci fantasy game about mech suits.
It's very easy to do that.
that is the natural. That's kind of like if Unbound is like has a sloping surface towards a sump. That's what that is.
That's where it is. That's where the water levels.
Overclocked mech suits.
So how did you solve that problem in the Kickstarter then? How did you make people understand what the hell you did?
We did not do that.
We did not. No.
It was a mistake.
So it got funded.
Yeah.
It did.
It got over. I think what was it? 38 grand. We got
it was. Yeah.
Did you get?
I yelled.
So it was. So I guess I'm trying to figure out like how did you break through? You didn't break through, or you feel like that if you'd had a setting, it would have been 138? Or
no,
I think if we'd have included a setting, we would have made more money and made a worse game.
Interesting. Okay.
It would have been easier to sell, easy to pitch, easier to get on podcasts at the time and things like that, and do advertising.
We were scared of setting at the time as well. I think there was an element of like not wanting to put our stake in that, and not want to say, "Hey guys, here's my idea, here's my world, please buy it." It's more like, "Hey, here's some cool mechanics. We'll keep it at arm's length. We're gonna go over here and smoke cigarettes that we wrote our Wushu characters on."
Yeah,
and the way we sold it, I was really struggling, and I wrote this really like clean, dry, overly long thing breaking down like, here's why Unbound is good from a mechanical point of view. It's solving the problems you have with traditional role-playing games. It's got group identities baked in. It has specializations baked in. You build the world so you're engaged with it. And it was boring, and no one really cared. And I was really frustrated one night, and I wrote something which began, "Listen up, motherfuckers, it's Unbound." And I just screamed, like my caps lock started to come off for a page and a half. And I sent it over to Chris. Chris was like, "You know what, if you took the motherfuckers out of that, we could use that as our Kickstarter pitch." Which we did.
Yeah, but I could see, the frustration, right? You knew it was good. And for whatever reason, it just wasn't crossing the moat, right? Whatever that was, and it's just that frustration.
Yeah, it's just so hard. It was so hard to communicate what it was doing, without like sitting you down and showing you.
And we didn't have the language to know that. We didn't have the experience to know that was the problem. We were just like, well, it's a game we've made and it's cool and here's some fun settings alongside. But not like, okay, well, the reason why Spire sold well and sells well to this day is not the mechanics. The mechanics are fine, but the setting and the world has enough room for people to make their own parts of it. And from that, you can build a community, and from that, you can build ongoing support.
And that's actually not something I've never thought about, but it makes total sense when I hear it said out loud. Because that's what it is for me too. And sometimes the setting will put me off. Like somebody will say to me, Craig, they'll talk to me about the mechanics of a game, and I'll be like, "Whew, that's cool. But here's the setting." I'm like, "Eh."
Yeah.
It's like, well, shit, that's too bad. Well, so Unbound is done. Right. And it's released. And whether this is you're releasing beta playtest rules or whether we're talking about when the thing actually ships out and people start getting their hands on it, what were some of the reactions that made you really happy that you didn't expect? Right. So you were expecting people to go, "Wow, this is cool how you can do this. And this flexibility. And we're making dolphins one day and wizards on a bus the next day." Those are things I would think you would anticipate. Right. But was there anything that you guys got back from the chamber you were like, "Oh, wow, that's cool"?
So one of the problems is that we didn't hear a lot back.
We didn't have an audience at that point, so we couldn't generate playtests.
Well, we did playtest it. I'd like to point out.
Sorry, yes. I think there was something like 6 external playtests and
6 external
4 or
playtests.
5 internal ones.
But like in America, you have this thing which we don't have. It's called the con scene.
Oh, right.
We don't have that.
Yeah.
Everything in the UK is incredibly atomized.
Interesting.
Maybe like you will, if you're in London, you'll maybe know two or three other groups.
Right.
I know the East London role players, but not the North London role players.
Interesting.
And whereas in America, you've got this huge community that constantly meets multiple times a year.
Yeah.
And you know each other, and even if just like by appearance, you know, and we don't have that. So we heard nothing.
Wow.
Because there was nobody to tell us, and we didn't have a community built. So it was only as we slowly stared at Twitter endlessly that we heard people occasionally talk about it, and that we were getting good stuff back. But we put this out, we sent the books out, and radio silence.
Yeah, like
I can't imagine what that must have been like.
It fascinates me to hear that someone recommended Unbound to you, that someone's talking about Unbound, because no one mentions Unbound now.
Like, as you mentioned,
I'm mad at myself because I literally don't remember where it came up.
No, but
I
like,
remember
we're on video now, and I honestly looked surprised.
Yeah,
when somebody talked about Aaron. What?
Who? Why?
Was it
funny?
Me? Yeah, I really, it makes me mad because and I told Chris and Grant a lot of the backstory on how I've added RPG content to this podcast and the other stuff that I do. And in that process, now I've injected myself into some groups, right? Some online groups that are people that know more about this than I do and put up with me being a part of it. And we talk a lot about mechanics here and settings there and a lot of different games, and they're doing different people and different groups are exposing me to a lot of different stuff. And I'm mad at myself because I didn't realize that was such a big deal. Because I think my initial reach out to you guys was Unbound based, where I was just like, hey, I hear this Unbound is great. You guys want to come on the show? And now to realize that you'd be like, who the hell wants to talk about Unbound?
That's why we were so excited, if nothing else.
It's fine, I guess. Yeah, like it's the thing. Unbound is an intensely personal experience.
Yeah,
because like, so I say I have a boast about Unbound, and well, you're American, you'll be used to boasting. Sure. I think it generates the best session 0 you'll have.
Interesting.
It makes an incredible thing because you build this world, and you build this world that's like on the crux of falling apart, and the mission that you're going to do, and you know the enemies that are coming against you, and also all the fun bits, which are like, okay, so I'm picking the ghost power, so ghosts are in this world. And then,
right.
And so now we factor in ghosts. Okay, so how are ghosts a thing? How many ghost ammo you? And you bring that forward. So everyone's hugely invested. Unfortunately, to everyone else, it's like being told about someone's 7th level paladin.
Right.
Because they weren't there. And it's not professionally written. It's not Game of fucking Thrones.
Yeah.
So it's quite hard to spread that around.
That makes total sense to me. Well, and when you guys were explaining to me, the idea of how you create the setting, and this is sometimes it's a derogatory term, but I don't mean it this way. It's almost like its own little party game, right? Where this is this collaborative writer's table situation, and there's like a game mechanic by the fact that there are cards.
We've recorded a 2-hour podcast based on it.
It's literally just a creation, and then we just sacked off the game. We never did that.
That sounds like a lot of work. But
we just just keep making games for a little bit.
If you're interested in learning about Unbound, you can go to Chris and I have we have a professional podcast. If you go to Rowan, Rook and Decard audio, search for that, and you can find the Heart Director's commentary, but also the like an Unbound character creation session which we played with some friends of ours, and it's really exciting to get into it. It's great.
All right, so I'm going to go listen to it when we're done, and I'm going to have it linked in the notes because that sounds phenomenal. So Unbound is out there. The crickets are going.
Yep.
You're starting to get a little bit of breadcrumbs. People are saying, yeah, we liked it, and things like that. So what's next? Like did you guys go, what the hell? That was let's keep going, or what? Like, I don't there's a lot of people that would have said, well, we tried, but you guys didn't. And why?
Because we had momentum.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do works on momentum. Once we start doing something, we have to keep doing it until we fall over.
Right.
Like, we have to keep doing the same thing. Like, one of the problems that we suffer from in games design is that we use iterative design.
Terrible plan. Don't do it.
Absolutely. If you're listening to this and thinking, I should make a game, how shall I make it? Do not use iterative design.
Do it right first time.
Ideally. But we will make a game, basically. We'll finish it, and then we'll throw it away, and then we'll do it again.
Right.
And use what we've learned from the last one and do it again.
And like the fiction will evolve alongside the mechanics. And so Spire had 19 drafts before we got it to
no kidding.
17 before we got to playtest, 19 before we got it to the Kickstarter. The project we're currently working on, I think we're on 12. So we've got a few more ahead of us. And that is not writing a full 80,000 page book.
Right.
But that is, here's the concept, here are the classes, we're going to go for that, blah, 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 blah. No! And you throw it out the window. And what hangs around is like the shell of it hangs around, like where those mechanics push into the fiction, that sticks around. And so over that, with Spire and with Hearts, Chris and I organically discovered, God, that sounds wanky. We organically discovered what Spire was, because we had to create a world together. And so by the end of the process, you can point at a thing, and Chris and I can say, that's Spire, that isn't Spire. Reliably, we can make that decision. We know what that is. And then at that point, once we understand what it is, then the systems start falling into place.
That's fascinating. So I'd be curious then, as you're wrapping up the Kickstarter delivery of Unbound, were we in iterative Spire at that point? Were versions of Spire being created? What was happening with you? Were you guys making anything? Were you sitting there staring at Kickstarter and trying to like throw packages and mail them? Or
I was a freelance games journalist.
Interesting.
At the time, I was a freelance games journalist from like 2010 to 2017, which was great. Like a lot more press trips than my current job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but a lot more writing previews of Ubisoft games, so it balances out. And I was throwing around looking for money. Chris was claiming job seekers allowance. And we were just sort of bumbling around doing stuff. We fulfilled Unbound. We got it printed. We didn't get any extra copies printed because we didn't have a website. We had no means to sell them. We didn't really have a following at that point. And I think it would be the spring or summer. I was like, well, I've got this idea for a game. I've been developing a Dark Heresy hack, because I always thought Dark Heresy, the Warhammer 40,000 role playing game, didn't deliver. It didn't feel like how I wanted to feel. So I started writing a spy game based off that. And I was like, okay, but I can't have the Warhammer 40,000 license. So what if it was, I don't know, elves? And so I wrote on a big bit of paper, Spindle, City of Shadows. Which, thankfully, we called it Spire rather than Spindle. But there were 3 sheets of A3, which I was drawing elves on. I was like, I want elves in big hats and glasses. And also, cool, there's a secret spy network all throughout there. And they're fighting for, I don't know, a god. And then I brought Chris in to sort of help.
to make it palatable.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, by help I mean do it.
Because I believe at one point I was looking at this document and going, this spy shit doesn't make sense.
Absolutely, yeah. The revolutionary stuff, that's Chris.
It doesn't make sense. Like, what we're looking for here is revolution.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'm the fucking leftist as well.
Yeah.
Jesus, yeah.
You thought you would have been the one that comes up with the revolutionists.
Right, yeah.
Well, as we move into Spire, let's take a quick break, because this is the game. Well, these next 2 games. It was Unbound that brought me to you, but it's these next 2 games that I'm just absolutely fascinated by. So we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll talk about Spindle. I mean Spire. We'll be right back.
Call it.
Hi, I'm Alexander Zdanchuk from Riga, Latvia, and I'm a patron of Third Floor Wars. Those guys open the beauty of Malifaux 3rd Edition to me and continue to provide tons of great content. You can support them too. Follow the links in the show notes below or search for Third Floor Wars at patreon.com.
What is it worth to you to get this podcast on a weekly basis? Is it worth $1 a month? $5 a month? $20 a month? If you'd like to help support the work that we're doing here on Third Floor Wars, please go by our Patreon. We're at patreon.com/Third Floor Wars. There you can pledge at any level, any dollar amount. Whatever you give us will help us put out quality content on a regular basis and hopefully make tabletop gaming a little bit better for you every week.
Time to give a shout out to our newest patrons. A big special thanks goes to James Kahn, Rage Quit Wire, Deck Roll, Eloy, Robo Rotten, Jacob Suderman, Joshua Hatch, Donald Kroger, John Fox, and David Gadea. Because of you and the 100 plus that are supporting us on Patreon, we're able to put out regular content on a weekly basis. We appreciate it. So the one of many things that confession, I've probably spent a little too much time on your website. I've been having a lot of fun on your website.
Oh, it was you, was it?
Yeah.
We've been
Go back
tracking
and look at
somebody
your,
who looked at our
yeah, look at
website.
your tracking
You
software.
downloaded all those
Your
PDFs for free.
IP127. And so this is obviously the first time that Grant, Chris, and I have met, but the laugh started immediately as we said hello to each other. I was expecting humor, so I'm not surprised that we're having fun, and my face hurts a little bit from laughing because it's obvious in your descriptions, the angle and your perception of things. So listen to this for the description that they have of Spire, and tell me that you don't want to go and pick it up. It's a fantasy punk RPG about rebellion, brutality, and oppression. What are you prepared to sacrifice to get what you deserve? And 2 sentences. And immediately I'm like, all right, let's go. Like, where's my character sheet? This sounds like nothing I've done before, and I want to poke into this. So before the break, we talked a little bit about the seeds. So Grant comes up with elves and crazy hats, and we're going to have spies. Hands it over to Chris, and Chris says, that's garbage. It's about a revolution.
You'd be amazed how often I use the word garbage.
What's next? So where does it turn? When we know there's going to be 15 versions of this game before we get to the end, but what's next after that, Chris? After you read the terrible ideas of Grant, but realize that there's value in there, right? You see some gold, right?
So the first thing I think we did was once we'd sort of gotten it to the point of being about rebellion, about revolution, we looked at the mechanic, which was also garbage because it was a Dark Heresy hack.
Right.
And I don't know if you've ever looked inside Dark Heresy. It's just all rules.
Interesting.
It's the bad kind of tables. It's the kind of table where you roll a D66 to find a number between 1 and 66. Right? It's a grind to get through those
Are we
rules.
burning this bridge now? Is that happening? Is it Cubicle 7? They might still employ us.
Yeah, and we can make it good.
All right.
So next week's guest is the creator of...
That'd be bloody ass. But it's a lot, right? It's
Creator
a lot
of the Pirate Warhammer 40,000 role-playing game. Pirates!
We needed to fix the rule system.
Yeah.
Which we didn't in the first version. We made it bad.
Fucking defense, man.
Yeah, we have a problem in design with defense mechanics.
Interesting.
We're terrible at them.
Unbound.
That's why if you'll notice in Spire, it doesn't really have a defense mechanic. It has a lot of different hit points and like fail forward mechanics rather than a defense, rather than an armor class type thing. But Spire went through what? Playing cards?
D4s.
D4s,
D10s.
D6 pools, D20.
Yeah, there was D20, and then you had to roll under your resistance to confirm a success.
Yes.
Which nearly got printed, and I'm really glad we didn't go for that.
It got close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And through
mechanically,
all of that,
Chris, I'm sorry, before we go on, because all of this is fascinating to me. Like, where are you building off of here with these mechanics, Chris? These different iterations of mechanics. Are there other games that you're playing and you're like, that's interesting, or I've come across this idea, or this concept is interesting, or are you just pulling it right out of
my ass? Yeah.
Somewhere. Yeah.
Like we tend to start whole cloth. We go like, okay, so let's just say we've got a D6. What information can I get out of a D6 that I want and need for this game?
Right.
A D6 doesn't give us enough variance. There's not enough room to play in the numbers either side of the number you rolled, right? Mm-hmm. So let's go up to D10. Any more than that, you're probably looking at a roll over or under system with a D20. D10 is a really solid and safe dice for making a system with.
Interesting.
Between 1 and 10 is a safe variable. And it gives you a lot of room to play, a lot of levers to pull in the systems you use. So yeah, we finally got on to the D10, and it just, it was a big day.
It was kind of a challenge to convince you to make it a story game.
Yeah,
because it was we had story game aesthetics and what's the word? A story game vibe. But for Chris having a D10 pool which consulted a table, like, because what we have is broadly an Apocalypse World game with one move.
Right.
And I had to sell it to Chris, but thankfully he came on board. The challenge between Chris and I, the fundamental, I think the reason why our games are quite interesting is that I want as few mechanics as possible, and Chris doesn't want as many mechanics as possible, but Chris wants friction, and I want frictionless.
Interesting.
You said something very clever about this recently, Chris. What was it?
Oh God, no! You're going to try and remember it now. I forget it. So, so when you're making rules, if you've got points of friction in the system, i.e., where you rolling to hit and then rolling to wound is a point of friction, right? Because it slows the game down. That every point of friction builds story.
Okay.
Because if you're rolling to hit, then you found out if you've hit. So you know that character's sword has contacted. Okay. If you're then rolling to wound, you then know if that's a glancing blow and you drop your sword, or if it pierces the armor, and that changes the tone of the story and what's happening.
Right.
The fewer points of friction you have allow story, because they give you the chance to make it up. The dice don't tell you what's happening. You tell the story what's happening.
Yeah.
So you have to balance the level of friction for how much story you want and how you want that story to be presented. Like, if you look at something like Hero System and GURPS and stuff, the story comes from the results of the dice.
Correct. Right.
Whereas if you look at Apocalypse World and even lighter games, going all the way down to Belonging Outside Belonging and things like that, there's less rules, so they allow you to make a story. They give you that space to play and let you have that space to make a story. So
does that mean, Chris, that you and Grant, that's the push and the pull between you? Is Grant is pushing towards more, let's get rid of dice rolling, let's open things up a little bit, and Chris, you're like, yeah, we kind of need this a little bit, or
numbers, mate, get rid of numbers.
Yeah, I prefer 60% more rolls than Grant. Like, I do not like incredibly rules heavy systems. I like reading them, not playing them.
Right.
Whereas Grant would quite happily just yell at somebody over a table for an hour rather than actually play.
I think a lot of that comes from, like, your first game, the game that which you cut your teeth on was D&D.
Yeah.
Right.
And the game which I cut my teeth on was Wushu.
Yes.
Like, which I'd found and downloaded and has, again, characters you can fit on a cigarette paper. And so I was used to just instant gratification, short burn campaigns. Go. Tell me a story. Fine. Okay. Bye. See you next week. Like, Wushu, you can't run a campaign longer than 3 weeks or it gets boring. It's fascinating. But D&D, you can run it for years because D&D is a sort of edging experience around XP. It's like, and like, the more you say no to play, can I do this yet? No. But maybe soon, darling. And then players keep coming back to try and earn the approval of the dungeon master, which is why they're called that. Yeah. Whereas in Wushu, it's like, yeah, fuck yeah, okay, cool. You jump through the window and you pull out both your guns and you're spraying bullets everywhere. All right, cool. Then you land on a helicopter and steal a helicopter, and now you marry the helicopter. Fine, whatever. It just doesn't last. And I think that's where Chris and I gel really interestingly. Yeah. Where we build a system which does that.
So let's use Spire as the example. Who arbitrates this battle of goals that you have? I mean, obviously it works. So with Spire, where did it become more of a Grant game, and where did it become more of a Chris game, and where did it finally end up as your game collectively? Like, how does that work using Spire as the example?
So Spire is probably closer to a Grant game, as it were.
I think
rules weight wise,
right?
Than it is to mine, because that was the best place for it.
And how did you know that, Chris? So how did you let Grant win?
Okay, I'm not sure I appreciate the idea that this is a continual balance. I think, like, Chris decided it was best for the business.
Right, but you understand what I'm being a little flippant about it, but you get the idea what I'm talking about, right? It's at some point Chris goes, you know what? Like, my instinct is to push more towards the mechanics here, but I'm realizing that, like, Chris's words were perfect, which is we found the right spot, right? We found where it would be. So I'd be curious, How do you know that, Chris? When do you realize, you know what, I'm not going to push more. I'm not going to add another D10 stage to this process.
It's when the rules exactly match the weight of the setting that's behind it.
Interesting. Okay.
So remember, as we said, that we iteratively design, and the setting kind of follows along with that piece by piece.
Right.
The setting kind of stays intact. The rules change. So each time we do it, we're fitting the rules to more and more setting.
Got it.
And there's a point at which it is the setting that you've designed, even if only in your head, exactly matches what the rules are producing. So you're creating story beats when you need to,
right?
And the rules are staying out of the way when people just want to talk and tell stories. And there's just that balance point. And Spire, any game doesn't hit it all the time,
right?
But when it hits it most of the time, that's the point where you need to stop.
And so, Grant, is it the same for you? Is it just from your same side? You that's exactly how you know, the way Chris just described it, or is your process of going, yeah, I think we're there? Is it any different?
I throw out ideas. I think I am behind this iteration. I'm continually pushing forward, and it's Chris which I'm presenting these ideas to, and then we build on and iterate. And the challenge for me, I think, is coming up with something which feels interesting and unique and worthwhile, and then I think it's when I can present it to Chris and we can discuss it, and then like an hour afterwards we're like, well, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
because generally what I'll do is, and like so this is kind of a window into the process we've had over the last year. We've been writing a game, and we haven't got the core mechanic yet. We knew what it was about, but we didn't get the core mechanic, so we had all these different variations and all these different things where we're like, well, this is a cool idea for a game, let's put it somewhere else, and we sort of develop things for a while. And because we're doing all right, like monetarily, we're okay to take our time and develop these projects. And it's literally, so we've been working on this since last May, and it was earlier this week. I had the idea at midnight. I turned up to Chris, and it was the first time that we described the system, and there was no point where we were like, oh, we'll fix that later.
Interesting.
And it was like, no, this is it. I understand. We've removed the elements we want. There's enough levers to pull. There's enough points where you could insert a system here where we can make something interesting. And it is, I think there is an element of me bringing things to Chris.
Right.
And then, and like, not, because like, I've got an outlet for my weird games that don't quite work, which is the one-page game. So I can just sort of fire those off. But in terms of, like, Chris knows more about role-playing games than anyone I know, and I trust him implicitly. Like, as we were, I'm drunk. I'm drunk, Chris. I'm sorry.
You guys should go in business together. Listen to you.
This is really strong.
They are, yeah. Good Sheffield beers.
But that's the thing. Like, I know Chris has my best interests at heart, and he has the game's best interests at heart. And so there's an element of, I'm going to outsource the measured, slow, no, let's not do this, no, let's pull back, no, let's maybe not have that idea in the game. And so I can afford to just forward, and Chris will gently pick out the things which are good from that.
Pan for gold and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
And all that sick.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason most games aren't created by two people, right? But for whatever reason, and obviously there was a huge foundation that was built long before you made games together, you guys have found a very interesting Venn diagram, it sounds like to me, where there's enough overlap where you both can stop and go, this is a good game. But there's enough silo happening where you've got the Grant happening, you've got the Chris happening, and then suddenly at some point the game falls into that overlap where you're both like, yeah, I think this is a good game. Does that sound, am I articulating this right? Does that sound right?
I mean, honestly, like, even if you just look at like the sort of role-playing games that we like, or will tolerate, they don't cross that often.
Chris buys a lot of Call of Cthulhu adventures, which I could
love
not stand.
Call of Cthulhu. It isn't the best of rule sets.
Yeah.
But I like it, and Grant can't be doing with it.
Not at all. I like small press indie games, tiny weird games you might play once.
That's very, very fascinating to really kind of learn this. That's great. So let's talk about when Spire found the sweet spot, right? Were you both now at that point? Is it okay? I think we're ready to start like stage. Like, is the next stage to go? All right, I think it's time to put it on Kickstarter.
We've got to write it first.
You got to write all the classes under the new system.
Like, one of the things that we have about Kickstarter is we do not go to Kickstarter without a product.
That's phenomenal.
If
it isn't edited, but
if we could not go push across a table, here is a game, it doesn't look pretty, you can play it, there's no way we're going to Kickstarter. That's, in my head, that's just not fair to your customers, because you're selling potential.
Or to you either, in terms of like because at that point you promised them things which you might not be able to deliver on, which we've had to become really careful about. I'm going to say 60% of the stretch goals in Heart, again, you came up with in a pool, Chris.
Yes, I did.
And I had to write.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know.
It's, and that's smart. And, as great as Kickstarter can be, from a process standpoint, on both sides of the exchange, from a creator standpoint and from a backer standpoint, you don't get a lot of mistakes before a bridge is burned. It's smart for you to approach it that way. So the picture that was being painted to me about Spire is you knew what the container was, what the world was. You had a feeling for that. You knew what you wanted the game to feel like, and you were just figuring out how to fill it, right? How to get those mechanics in there. What I'd be curious about, and maybe this is a question for you, Grant, but Chris, jump in. Was there moments when a mechanic came in and the container changed a little bit where, you went, wow, like because of this mechanic, let's change this a little bit about the world. We're not going to drastically change this now about dwarves, but does that make sense? Like, has there been times mechanics have changed the world?
That is how it works.
Okay.
In that as you develop mechanics, I think like the best way in like talking about it like a wrapper. So like there's like if you have the mechanics and then the fluff, the setting is a wrapper which goes around that. Every time we put in new mechanics, it distorts the wrapper from the inside, and then we gut those and take them out, but the wrapper still holds that.
Interesting. Okay.
And so the shape of the game, which forms over the course of that, is made up from the indentations of all these mechanics coming in. Like, oh well, that doesn't work. Well, that does work. And like generally, the way in which we function is we keep the names of class abilities and change everything else. Like we'll keep the fluff, and then the fluff will adapt. And like Heart was a really interesting one because we ended up after Kickstarter, because like we had a great Kickstarter. It was really fun in being able to playtest the game and get support for the game, so people were excited, and so we had a bunch of money come in, and we made all these promises, and we wanted to be good as well.
Yeah.
And so like we had the playtest feedback, and like from that, I think like 3 or 4 of the classes saw a complete overhaul.
Wow.
In terms of what they did. Not just like not just like, oh okay, well this guy here has 4 health rather than 3 health. It's like no.
Right.
They're different now.
Like 80% of the mechanics changed.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's because the wrapper changed. Well, okay, no, this feels different in this way. How can we push? How can we make this more accessible? And so I think what marks out a game by Chris and I is that there is this shared world between us, which we understand, which we can't quite speak. We can't name it. And like as we were writing Heart, we got to, I think we were like a year in, and we both realized
it's so weirdly embarrassing.
We were a year in, and we realized that we had completely different ideas of what it looked like when you went out the front door in the game.
Isn't that fascinating?
Chris thought it was meat. I thought it was dead cities. And we were like, well, I guess it's both then, and start smushing together.
But literally, we've been working on the same game for a year with these just completely different paradigms of what everything looked like.
A fundamental difference.
A fundamental difference in the world of the game. But everything still fit into both.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And you start to get an image of what it looks like. And like it is beautiful to see that evolution as something comes together. And we've done this with the game we're working on currently. It's Hollows, I'm gonna name it. There we are, it's Hollows. The game we're working on currently, the different iterations we've kept. So it's about hunting monsters,
right?
And everything has changed underneath that in terms of like why you're doing it, what you're doing it for, what each swing of your axe looks like, how that feels, and eventually you sort of aggregate build up something which is strong enough to take the weight of the mechanics you're putting on it.
So it's interesting because you talk about Hollow for just a second, and then you have a sentence that follows it, Grant. And in one sentence, that sounds to me like the center of gravity that you work from, right? So you say, we're going to make a game about hunting monsters. Is that what happened with Spire 2? Did you just have the center point of gravity and then just everything just wrapped around it over time and it evolved?
It was the city and Dark Elves.
Yeah.
We knew there was the Dark Elves, we knew there was a city, and we knew there was secrecy. So initially it was very espionage, there was a lot of fieldcraft, a lot of like acquiring assets and burning assets, and we realized that wasn't really fun.
Yep.
And it required you to know a lot of like John le Carre shit. So we were like, okay, well, what can we just sort of improvise? And Chris got this idea for Revolution. Because he asked me, he was like, okay, well, once you've done the espionage, then what happens? Oh, nothing, I guess. I don't know, you fail. And so
but it was cool.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you looked great. Did I say you had a big hat on? And Chris bringing in the idea of Revolution, it's like, well, here's the end point for the game. And we knew that we wanted Spire. We wanted this weird city. We wanted this, like a humor there. I think like Spire's quite funny as far as fantasy books go.
Oh, it's
like
it's dark humor, but yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of Pratchett. I think it's closer to Pratchett than Tolkien, in that we're making fun of things, and like everything, and like even Heart is hilariously tragic.
Right.
The point, because Chris and I were really inspired by sitcoms growing up. I think like if we put forward two things which have defined our entire career, it's Red Dwarf and Bottom.
Yeah. To this day, and I will literally die on this hill. Bottom is the best written comedy ever made.
It's very good.
Oh, that's funny.
That's
really
funny. If you
funny.
go back and watch it now as like an adult that understands the English language and how things are written and put together, Bottom is one of the greatest comedies ever written.
It's also reprehensible.
Oh, yes, do not get me wrong. There's some stuff in there.
I literally can't think of the last time that I watched Bottom, but I've had this argument before with people that there's two types of people in the world: those that have watched Red Dwarf and everybody else.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a solid argument.
Red Dwarf, Red Dwarf is a brilliant expression of what a role-playing game is.
It really is. I've never thought about it that way, but that's exactly right.
It's a party that doesn't gel.
Yeah.
About personalities who just barely get along, just sort of going on adventures.
And getting on with the goddamn story.
Yeah. They all hate each other.
It's so true.
But like they're not quite at the grade of reprehensible people.
Yep.
No one there is all. It's not like Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where everyone there is like actively a horrible person.
Right.
Everyone in Red Dwarf is basically trying their best.
Trying their best.
That's
a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure everybody has this, but and we'll get off Red Dwarf in a second, but like.
No, don't write checks your ass can't cash.
You know, but you know how like you have certain tests that you put out there when you meet somebody. And like one of the tests that I don't actually put out there, but if someone, the three of us sitting here meeting and we bring up Red, and one of you were like, I just don't think it's a very good show. I'm like, okay, so that you're in that bucket now. And I figured out a lot about you because you just told me you don't like Red Dwarf.
We don't have to talk anymore. That's fine.
Right. But if you say I like Red Dwarf, it's like, let's go get a beer.
No, I get
and we don't have to talk about Red Dwarf, but now I understand which bucket you fall into.
It's been so long since I met another new human. If they were to piss directly on Craig Charles, I'd buy them a drink at this point, I think.
That's so funny. So for the listeners right now, because we've talked a lot about making the sausage when it comes to Spire, and we've got an idea of how it comes together. For somebody listening right now, who should go by right now? Who would really enjoy this game? Is there other games we can compare it to? Like, say, if you like this, you really dig Spire, or if you're tired of this, Spire is a great breath of fresh air. If you're into this type of thing, we already said, obviously, if you like Red Dwarf, I think you like Spire, but I'm trying to give the listeners an idea of whether Spire is for them, because it's obviously not for everybody, but who would really enjoy playing it?
Yeah, buy it now. Find out afterwards.
Yeah.
Who would have a lot of fun playing Spire?
Do you like Blades in the Dark, but wish it was slightly longer? You'll love Spire.
Nice. Very nice.
Do you like Blades in the Dark, but wish it had a ham-fisted political agenda? You'll love Spire. Was Red Markets too serious for you? You'll love Spire.
It is
Chris,
still
what is
ridiculous that we read Blaze in the Dark maybe 90% of the way through Spire.
I read it after. I didn't touch it because I knew how similar it was.
Interesting. I did not realize that.
People think it's a bloody hack.
We have no idea.
Now, Chris, would you consider is it? I mean, from a setting perspective, I could see where it's very similar. Do you think the mechanical similarities as well?
There is occasionally, yes.
Yeah.
The crossover is slight but noticeable.
Got it.
Spire is, to my mind, a much simpler game.
Right.
And it focuses more on, as the resistance system does, on loss and sacrifice. Whereas Blaze of the Dark has more of a successful air to it.
Correct. It's about building.
Yeah, it's about building stuff. And Spire is about not losing stuff.
That's fascinating.
So the entire resistance system is literally built on the phrase, what do you have to lose?
Uh-huh.
So if you look at the resistances, blood, silver, reputation, like shadow is infamy and things like that. Like all of your resistances are literally what you as a person have to lose.
Interesting.
And it's a system that's designed to take them from you.
Just slowly shave it away.
Yeah. And you can get it back.
Then quickly shave it away.
Yeah. You can get it back. You can fight for it. You can regain it. But you have to fight for it. If you do nothing, it's going away. That creates
the conflict, that creates the resources, that creates the why we do this, right?
That's that creates the friction that drives story.
Yeah. Very, very fascinating. So, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from this, we're going to talk about Heart, which is tied to Spire, and you'll see when I talk about the description of it, but it's not Spire. So I want to understand why. So we'll be right back. Howdy friends, Craig here. Nothing makes Malifaux easier than having the right tools. Here at the third floor, we love all the licensed Malifaux goodies from Custom Meeple. Not only are they helping support this podcast, they sell custom-made weird licensed tokens and terrain. They sell it all. Crew boxes, terrain, markers, tokens, and even a 3x3 full Malifaux board. Custom Meeple sells a complete M3E token set covering every marker and token you need to play. Custom Meeple are the source for the official accessories for Malifaux. Everything is designed by hand and authorized by Weird Games. Check them out at custommeeple.com, that's with one M, or follow the link in the show notes. Up your Malifaux game and be sure to tell them Craig from the third floor sent you. If you use the promo code Third Floor Friend, all one word, THIRDFLOORFRIEND, you'll get a 5% discount and help support the podcast. It's valid on everything except retail products and playmats. So before the break, I talked about, how the two are tied. So, and normally I don't do this on the podcast where I literally read clippings from your website, but I like how you guys write. So I'm going to do it again here. So Heart is set in the heart, the nightmare, unreal labyrinth that pulses and writhes beneath the city of Spire. Heart is a game about damnation, redemption, survival, and obsession. It's also a game about body horror, walls made of breathing meat, and exploring a possibly malevolent parasite dimension. Is it Grant? Do you write this stuff?
Yeah, I write the stuff. And Chris
it's really good, Grant.
Thank you.
It's really good.
I'm glad.
And like I said, I got more excited about this interview because I'm like, I need to talk to these people. I need to talk to these people who think it's okay to put this on a website.
Absolutely. It's our website. We can do what we want with it.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So when does the idea of Heart come alive? Because obviously it's tied to Spire from a fluff perspective, right? At what point did you say, you know what, I want to drill in more to Spire, and that's when Heart starts to come about? Or Chris, are you saying, you know what, I've got some ideas mechanically, like I want to build a game around this, and Grant's like, well, shit, we already got Spire.
I think Heart was actually my idea. I think
both parts of it were your idea.
Yeah, but not the whole of Heart.
No, the mechanics and the fluff.
Yeah. But the idea of I reckon we can make the resistance system do dungeon crawling.
Interesting.
Like that far, at least, it was just like I reckon it can do dungeon crawling. I'm not sure how, but we can work on that.
But you could see it, right?
Yeah, because again, it's about loss. And if you look at D&D, it is about gain.
Yep.
It is, I mean, gold used to equal experience points. Like, it was everything.
Literally, yeah.
And we saw this opportunity to completely invert that, whereby what you're looking to do is not lose money. You know what I mean? Like, not things to not get worse.
Right.
And kind of out of that, what's the worst place possible in a world we already have? Well, it's the heart that's underneath Spire. And also it got to let us play with a lot of the interesting factions and things we loved from Spire in weird new ways.
Right. From a marketing standpoint, it made sense because we already had a lot of fans of Spire. We were like, well, we could try and write a new system. However, we might as well use this mad place and then start expanding it. And to our community's credit, only one person has complained about the massive expansion of Heart in between the books.
So it's interesting too, because this now echoes back to the struggle with Unbound, right? So now you're in a situation where you're making a game and you have a very clear pitch, right? A very clear way to communicate this is what it is. It is set in Spire, but we're, instead of being above, we're being below, and we're going to see if this works in a dungeon crawl. And that's, in a very short period of time, you can completely communicate it to a fan base that you've already created at this point with Spire. So that's interesting. So from an iterative process then, Chris, you say to yourself, hey, all right, let's go underground. Let's make this work for dungeon crawl. You bring that to Grant. Grant, what is your first reaction?
I was very excited, the prospect of an OSR story, because like I love the memory of playing OSR. Yeah, I don't like the experience of playing OSR.
That's so true.
Like, there's so many things you can get wrong. There's so many, especially and the older fashioned you go and the less sort of abstracted you make it. There's all sort of, aha, you didn't check under the rug, only on top of the rug, and now you all have leukemia. And it's like, I don't want to do that. And so what we wanted to do with the resistance system with this was skip to the end. So we're not interested in how much money you've got. We're interested in when you run out of money and then what happens.
Wow.
So that was really fun to sort of take that and then apply it to dungeon crawling. And then because Chris and I, we have an obsession with death, I think. I certainly do. Yeah. We're both, that's sort of tied into the depression a little bit. We're both trying to master death. I certainly am. And so Heart is a game about dying tragically and beautifully in this just ugliest environment possible. And I think the juxtaposition of that was really like, okay, so what sort of lunatics go into a dungeon? What sort of person decides I'm going to go into a place which is not, I'm going to break in to an underground castle.
Confined.
The only escape I've got is flooded. Like, it's not a sensible decision. And so we wanted to try and talk. I was really excited about the prospect of exploring other worlds and unrealities, because that's my shit.
Yeah.
And talking about like these hugely tragic people who decide to go into a dungeon and die down there.
So I'd be curious, and this might be a way for us to help frame Heart. Where does it typically start, right? So if we say D&D is, all right, you meet in a tavern, where does Heart start? A game of Heart.
Chris, anything? I've got an idea.
Or is there not a standard?
There's no map is the thing.
You make the map during the game, so like you plot it in a kind of weird legacy fashion. Originally, it was supposed to be a place called Derelictus in Spire. And that's if you look at like the sort of overarching layout of Heart, it's at the top. And you're meant to go down. But a lot of games don't start like that. Heart is the perfect game for in media res starting. Because it's very easy to just have, okay, so you writhe your way out of a still pupating cocoon. What? I do what? But I just made this character. Yes, well, we're here now. Deal with it.
My favourite way to start Heart... Oh, sorry, Chris.
No.
My favourite way to start Heart is you start off in Derelictus and you have everyone waving to them as they're going on an expedition into the Heart, and you name all of their compatriots.
Like the Titanic leaving the dock.
because Derelictus is built. It's built around. It's a disused train station. We're really big on disused train stations, and so everyone's sort of standing on the platforms and waving you off. It's really exciting. You smash cut to 3 days later, and everyone's dead, and one of them's being eaten, and you're running. Wow. You're running through this nightmare city, which you don't understand. But there's like a lot of the fun in Heart is taking this weird environment and finding something human in it. So what a lot of people will do, a lot of GMs will do, is they'll make their own haven, which is a safe landmark. They'll make their own haven. We have a book, a wee source book, which lets you make your own haven with the players. And a lot of people will put that together. That's their haven, and then they explore out from there, and they can come home and see how it changes. There's the different rules which interact with it. But because the core conceit of the Heart is that it builds itself around you as you go through.
Huh.
It makes itself, because that's how a GM does it.
Yeah.
So the heart is a big GM god who lives in the world, and so we can, like, if it doesn't make any sense, like fictively, in D&D, it does in Heart, because the heart knows you want to get trapped in this route.
The truth is at the table. Literally, the world is changing.
There's if you first ever open the Book of Heart, there's a sort of spiraling passage of text, like a frontispiece. And it has the very definition of a Heart game in it as the last line, which is the Heart will give you what you want, or it'll kill you trying. And
one of our players needle pointed that, which I'm really happy about.
But like, it's like this. The Heart is like, we have various different origin stories for the Heart and what it could be. You can choose whichever one you want.
We disagree on what it is.
Yeah, but like, a good way of looking at it is the Heart is like an idiot god who loves you dearly and is desperately trying to give you what you want. Oh, you're lonely? I'll give you friends.
What if Yogg-Sothoth was a helicopter
friends.
parent?
Yeah. Like,
interesting.
It's trying to learn, and it's trying to adapt, and it's trying to change the world so that it's better for everyone. In the same way that like a rogue AI is going to work out that the problem with the planet is humans and remove humans so that the planet's better. You know what I mean? It's that sort of...
Yeah.
All it has is flesh and teeth. So it's going to use those as best it can.
That's incredible. So how much of the Heart did we understand when it didn't exist? When we only had Spire, was the Heart a thing? And you guys didn't explore it that much? Okay.
There's a chapter in Spire on
yeah, there's a fairly sizable bit in Spire about it. One of the player character classes is focused around it. The Blood Witches, they make pilgrimages down into the Heart.
And the Vermissian Sage is a kind of a wizard of the mass transit network which punctured the heart of it. The heart of the Heart.
Wow.
So we wanted an excuse to have weird stuff crawl out of the walls. Or to have a place where, like, in Warhammer terms, like chaos. So to have something where we can have weirdness and magic come from. So we put the Heart in. Originally called the Core, I believe, but it sounded too sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad we changed it.
Yeah.
And that if there's something too weird to sort of sustain, even with the high levels of weird in Spire, well, it comes from the Heart. Fine, whatever. And you can get away with whatever you want from there. And whatever is your Spire, whatever's your weirdness, it came from the Heart. Fine, okay.
There's always a place you can one up if you need to. Yeah. Well, the Heart made it. Whatever.
Yeah. Whatever. A wizard did it.
And so we went, let's push them down into this unreality, into this like, what's the phrase you use, Grant, where reality burns away like wet paper.
Well, reality burns like old photographs.
Old photographs, that's it.
Oh, that's so cool.
A red wet heaven. That's the word I use. That's the phrase I use a lot.
That's in the book.
Yeah.
That's really good. So what makes Heart different is that you guys had customers that were playing Spire.
Yeah.
That I would imagine, because Spire, the Heart was part of Spire, and as GMs will do, they probably put layers onto the Heart outside of your purview, right? And then you say, okay, well, now here's the Heart. What was there some interesting reactions from your Spire players? How did they absorb Heart? Were they like, this is amazing? Or did you have instances where they're like, well, no, you know what? I'm going to stay with Spire. Or did you have people going, wow, Heart is where we're headed. People are playing both. I'm really curious because it's different than Spire. Spire didn't have something before it.
They're very different games, but they do appeal to a similar crowd.
Okay.
One of the big things that runs through all of our games, whether they're hopeful or weird or whatever, is this sort of skein of sadness and tragedy.
Right.
And that element appealed to both groups. And they use roughly the same rule systems. They are slightly changed between games.
Got it.
Because they had to be, as we talked about with the wrapper and everything.
Yep.
Like this had to be changed to fit what we needed. So it is very easy to use one as a source book for another.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we're very careful of is not to be prescriptive or descriptive. I don't even know which tense I'm using. In our setting, we don't tell people what happened. If you look at Spire, there is no timeline. There is also no mention of chronological years in the book.
We got rid of them.
We erased every single one. So there's the year of Red Crows.
Yeah, we the High Elves name name the year prematurely, and then there's a council who are determined to make sure it lives up to the name.
But crucially, there's actually no concrete way of proving that this year happened before this year or after this year. So there's not that level of structure. So you saying home GMs put their layer on it. That's cool. Keep it.
We wanted that.
That's by design.
That's yours.
It sounds like.
Keep that. That will exactly fit into the new one. All we're doing is throwing more story hooks at you and more things to mess with.
Oh, that's cool, guys.
At no point we're going to go, oh, but you can't have that there because there's a forest.
Right.
And you've built your castle there, so then the map doesn't fit. That doesn't happen.
We really don't
That's
like canon.
so cool.
Gets in the way.
It really does.
It does mean the more you write, I kind of wish that we liked canon because we have something to work from. And we work in worlds where they're changing a lot. We want Spire to feel like not a living city in as much as it's full of 2,000 NPCs which you can go and knock on their door and see what's in their laundry basket. But no, it's living and changing and evolving. And so between Spire and the first source book, things happened in the city and the districts change, and then we've got another source book coming out later this year, and things have happened and moved forward. And it's anywhere along this portion, and also it's yours. Make it up.
Sure.
Crucially, between Spire's released and Strata, the source book, there was one adventure in particular called Idle and Sky, and Idle and Sky advanced the in quotation marks plot.
Oh god, there's a meta plot, isn't there?
It's not it does not. You do not need to know it in any way.
Wow.
But Strata follows that certain things. We just used certain things from that book as though they happened. So you do not need to know at all any of the Book of Spire to play Spire.
And there's a box out in Heart, and the idea is hey, here's 150 words. Here's what you need to know. It's a big city of Spire. Underneath it, there's the heart. Reality goes off. It gets weirder the closer you get to the heart itself. On you go. And then past that,
cool.
what we wanted to do with the character classes in Spire and in Heart, I think in Spire a lot more so, is to take on that idea that we established with Unbound. And so, when I was saying earlier, I want ghosts. Now there's ghosts in the game. If you play a Knight of the North Docks, I want pubs and brawling in the game. Tell me about pubs. And then if you take the boat upgrade as a Knight of the North Docks, I want canals in the game. Tell me about the canals, Daddy. And it just works.
That's crucial to the whole design of the game, right? If you pick a Knight of the North Docks, your default appearance is of a dude in armor with a big sword, right? Just real basic. It's quarter plate, yeah.
It's the guy.
Enormous codpiece. And a two-handed sword, because they're the only people in the Spire who's legally allowed to carry two-handed weapons. Sorry, they're the only ones allowed to carry bladed weapons, so they carry a two-handed weapon to prove a point.
Yeah.
And they live at the docks, right? So right up against the water and in a landlocked area. However, one of the upgrades you can take is a boat in a city, I'd like to point out. Your character gets a boat. It can have a cannon on it. It's great.
We mentioned canals once in a very different part of the Spire.
Mm-hmm. And they're looped. They're like a boating lake.
Penfold Canal.
Yeah. And what that boat upgrade is saying to your GM is, cool, put a canal in every single district and everywhere we go, all of the time.
Yep.
And you are doing nothing wrong to the city. You're not getting it wrong if you do that, if you just change it. And that's what I love, that freedom. One of the classes, one of the abilities lets you talk to ghosts.
Right.
Nothing else does. Nothing else really meshes with that.
You can talk to ghosts, and we'll be like, hang on, we haven't put ghosts anywhere else in the game. Okay, cool. Once per session, summon a ghost. So that means you can rock up to the GM and say, no, there's ghosts in the game, look.
And it gives you that like dense spotlight time where you go, no,
and it's interesting for me to. It's interesting for me to hear this because I'm hearing the breadcrumbs of Unbound, right?
Yeah.
Where like at the table, we're going to make this world, which every RPG does that, right? Every gaming table has an element of that, but it's very interesting that this was prescriptive on your part. Like this is a design goal, is that we're going to make this part of the game.
I one of the things I hate most about role playing games as a big sphere is when people tell me I'm wrong,
right?
Because of a fact, and like that is common in things like Lord of the Rings. You know, you got your date wrong. That battle didn't happen then. What's the stuff? Balls to that. Not having that. Like I'm not even giving you the option to do that in Spire. If you say that isn't west of there, like, well, it is.
What's west, mate? I would like to harken back to something which I said very early on in this podcast, where I was describing Chris's notes, where it was 5 words. We write games for that now.
That's
like,
so cool.
Because we're on Heart now. The plot in Heart, like the sides, the plot is here's a job. Go down into the Heart. We'll give you some money. Whatever. That's no one's there. Like the job is secondary. Your beats, your calling is what generates the actual excitement in the game.
Right.
And so it's a list of I think like 30 different things which you can do when you advance, when you do them, when you tell the GM at the start of the adventure or at the end of each session what you want to achieve this session. And so we were really bored of players showing up with doing no prep and expecting to be shown a good time. And you can show up with no prep to Heart and have a good time because the players tell you the plot before game starts. And that's what we wanted. All of our games are based around that. All of our games are about the GM not going away in this sort of siloed hermitage where they write the plot and then the players are allowed in to do it. And it's always like...
Come watch my movie.
Yeah, because it's imprecise, it's imperfect. They can't possibly hope to get all the information they need. And it isn't live or active or engaged. And so what we want is we wanted to paint this world where everything's changing and everything's happening. And here are the NPCs and go. Tell a story, you'll have fun.
So cool. That's so cool.
Well, the way that I've always started a role-playing session when I'm GMing is to say, right, who's giving me a recap? No, one of you has to. You have to give me a recap. And the reason I do that is because I basically remember what happened.
Right.
Point is, I need to know what you remember.
Right. What's important to you?
Because if you've forgotten something, that means nothing. That's cut from the story. That never happened. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just go, okay, cool. So more of that, and you're done.
Yeah.
Well, and it does, and also does, because I do the same thing, Chris. And what's great about that, and this is something I just recently learned to start doing, because what happens is if I'm doing the recap, the players aren't going to interrupt me, right? Because I'm the GM, right? But if you say, Chris, give me the recap, then Grant's going to jump in. Yeah, but did you remember this? And then exactly what you're saying, Chris, is suddenly you're picking out the last week on the Spire. You realize what you now need to make important about this episode. Because they've given you the last week on recap, which is that's a phenomenal technique, Chris. And it's interesting to hear how you guys have made that part of the game.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put that into the system so you do not, in theory, many people do, you do not have to prep for Spiral.
Yeah.
You can, and yes, it is very helpful, but there are systems in place to just sort of let it run.
Which also means it's exhausting to run at the other thing.
Oh, it's so tiring.
You can't run a game for more than about 2 hours before you just crap out.
Well, and this idea too, and you're seeing more and more of this, or I should say I'm seeing more and more of this, where there's more shared responsibility at the table. It's not the GM, telling the story and everybody gets to listen. There is a lot more of this in design now. And I heard it said in a few different places where this much better fits our current world, right? If you're like me, I've got a full-time job that takes up 60 hours of my life. Then like an idiot, I do podcasts and YouTubes and Twitch, which takes up another some odd hours of life, but I still like to play games. And so I don't have time to rewrite Tolkien's world and bring to you the new version of Lord of the Rings. But something like this or Blades in the Dark, the other games that kind of do this say, look, just start playing. Just start frickin' playing and let's have a good time and let's figure out what this all is. It's really neat and how it fits things.
but doesn't take, but the downside isn't there as part of the process. That's great. Gentlemen, this was fantastic. My goal again was to understand what the hell you guys are doing, and I feel like I understand what the hell you guys are doing.
I think we've learned a little something.
Well, that's
We've all
good.
grown as people today. That's a nice
Wait
little-
till you hear it.
nice
Grant
little
and
arc.
Chris are going to fascinate you guys. They're really good. So obviously, we're going to link to the website. We've talked about a couple other items that we're going to link to as well. If people want to get more of you, is there any other resources out there for them? Should they? Are there some downloads that if they're getting excited listening to this, they should go grab?
If you think Chris and I are funny, and you want to listen to us talk about game design more, we have a podcast called Hearty Dice Friends. We at the time of recording, we're currently on hiatus, but we're going to pick back up with it. And there is a 180 episode backlog for you to listen to if you've not listened to it before. Which is Chris and I turn up every week and do games playing and design advice. Like we design
mouth
games
off
on
into
air
a
and stuff.
mic for an hour.
Yeah, just mouth fart into a microphone like our opinions mean anything, like two mediocre white men. But if you're into that, if you're into two mediocre white men, and apparently a lot of people
are we
are,
your mediocre white men?
could you add us to your roster of mediocre white men? You can go to
So unique in the gaming industry.
a lot of us aren't even mediocre. You can go to you can search for Hearty Dice Friends, and you can hear Chris and I tell jokes to each other for a long time. But otherwise, yeah, click on the links, go to rrdgames.com, and you can download everything we've ever written.
Go to Grant's Twitter.
Oh yeah, go to my Twitter. GS.
We'll link to the Twitter
yeah.
as well. Excellent.
Don't
Excellent.
link to
Chris's. Don't link to Chris's.
Hopefully
nothing
with a
there.
little bit of luck, I can talk you guys to come back on when Hollow becomes more of a reality, because I really enjoyed this.
Can't
Yeah,
wait for it to
it's-
become a reality.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to this
3 years
mechanic.
later.
I really hope it lasts for longer than a week.
That's funny. All right. For those of you that stuck around to the end, thanks for listening. Take care. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch so you don't miss the avalanche of content we create. Links are in the show notes. Be sure to check out our shop on thirdfloorwars.com for the latest in gaming apparel and gear. There you'll also find the latest information for the US FOE Tour. Find out where you rank in your conference or even in the entire United States. Get those models built, painted, and ready so we can see you at the next US FOE Tour Masters event. Please take a moment to write a review of this pod on your favorite platform. Rating and reviewing helps us find more listeners almost as cool as you are. Be sure to share this feed with all of your friends who love tabletop gaming. Thanks for listening. Howdy folks, Craig here. Now if you love gadgets as much as we do, you're going to love the new Third Floor Wars Gadget Bundle from Schooner Labs. Branded with the logo of your favorite podcast, it comes with 2 measuring multi-tools, a compass stepper for those tight and important movements, along with a compact dashboard to track your turn, strat, and scheme scoring along with your soul stones and pass tokens. It is the perfect bundle for anyone who plays Malifaux or just wants to look cool while doing it. The link is in the show notes. Check them out and help support your favorite gaming podcast. Right. Oh, I'm super excited because as unfamiliar as I am with Unbound, the more I'm reading about Spire and Heart, I'm really looking forward to this, and I appreciate you guys doing this.
No
with
worries.
me.
That's fine.
I'm not
Very
gonna lie.
exciting
Like
for
this,
me.
this isn't a million miles away from what Chris and I do most days.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Which is like I probably would have had like a Word document open during it, but yeah, you're all right.
All right, good.
It's actually slightly easier on that cam. You're not typing.
All right, I'll bring us back.
My beautiful
You guys doing okay on
baby.
time?
Yeah.
Yes, we're good. If we can wrap it by 8, that'd be lovely. Half an
Oh
hour.
yeah. Yep, easy. And the reason why it'll be easy is because, you know, my goal for the end of this is to understand how you make games. And what's great about what we did with Unbound and what we did with Spire is we've covered a lot of that, right? So now what I'm thinking is Heart is we can kind of get into now this is our, you know, this is a more recent
It's our
game.
victory
This is
lap.
yeah, exactly. All right, so I'll bring us back.
I kind of wish I'd played more Malifaux before coming on this show.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're into Malifaux.
Yeah,
Hello.
so the podcast started, actually, today's the 2-year anniversary of the first episode. So it started off focused on competitive Malifaux by Weird Games. And my menu of geek hobbies is very, very large, but Malifaux was the first time I said, you know what, I want to start creating shit for this. And then when the pandemic hit, I just couldn't play Malifaux.
Absolutely not, no.
And I went, a month or two of not doing anything. And I'm like, you know what? I haven't played role-playing games in 20 years. I'm going to go buy a couple role-playing games, and I'm going to get on, a virtual tabletop, and I'm going to get back into what was a huge love of mine long ago. And what was cool is, one, it's my podcast, so it can be about whatever the hell I want it to be, right? But what it did is, because I had that 20-year gap, what the role-playing industry and ecosystem I left was considerably different 20 years later.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
And what I've done is I always had this Insider Insight series where I talk to people like you guys, but now it's become almost a Rumpelstiltskin archaeologist process for me.
Okay.
Where like how the hell did we get here? Because when I came back, I loved what I left, and I am unbelievably in love with what I found when I came back. And to have that 20-year gap and just to see the jump and the advancement of an entire hobby, it has been incredible. So, I've been talking to lots of people. I interviewed Vincent and McGay Baker, about Apocalypse World, and that was fascinating. John Harper about Blades in the Dark. Talked to the other Baker about Eberron, like all of this stuff. Like, none of this existed when I left. There was GURPS and Champions and D&D.
Jesus, you got champions, yeah, bloody hell.
And then I come back to it and it's like, Jesus, this is amazing. So,
good Lord, these games are playable.
It's
I can lift these games.
So the podcast, as a result, it follows me, right? So I've been doing a lot of role playing and doing stuff on Twitch with it and whatnot. So yeah, but to go back to what started this conversation that you didn't want to be a part of, yes, Malifaux has, and still I always make sure every third or fourth episode is Malifaux related, because that's where I built my audience. But now I'm starting to pick up role-playing listeners because of who I'm having on the show and the discussions.
Chris and I played a bit back in the day.
Yeah.
I borrowed his
boxes of them.
Yeah. God, it's a good game. Bloody hell.
It's so good. And third edition just came out, guys.
Yeah,
and
we haven't touched third yet.
Never been better. Never, ever been better.
That's always rare to hear from a wargamer. This new edition is good.
Yeah, right?
We operate in the Games Workshop sphere. No one's ever happy when they do anything.
Yeah, Games Workshop is my ex-wife. I don't like talking about her.
All right.
Is that a legal marriage? That's an old one.
Chris, do you want to cover up the...
No. I trust me. I spent about every dime you could spend on it. Played it for a long time. But then I found Guild Ball and I found Malifaux and just realized, kind of like when you stop playing D&D and you start playing other RPGs, you're like, oh shit, there's other stuff. Yeah. Same type of thing. All right, guys, I'll bring us back and we'll talk about how we go from university to the three of you starting the company. All right, great. Hey, are you still here? Look, the podcast is over. And you sat through all of the breaks and bloopers? Well, I mean, if you're here, you might as well run over to patreon.com and become a supporter. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast too while you're at it, on whatever platform you're listening to. I do appreciate you sticking around. Take care.